Hello, everyone, and thanks for listening. So, I was looking and I was like, oh my goodness, not again. Please don't do this again because it's going to set off probably another firestorm if it goes bad. But Trump is planning a racial summit with Colin Kaepernick, Kanye West, and others. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I said, maybe because of all of the issues surrounding the slavery comments with Kanye West, it was such a heated topic and it set off a firestorm or a whirlwind on social media and all over. It's become the talk. So I guess because it's such a hot topic, or at least among, some of the other topics, Trump himself is planning the racial summit. So I want to see what happens because there was so many people who were disappointed about the comments that were made. So it says President Trump's enthusiastic about the potential series of racial summits with Colin Kaepernick and Kanye West. Apparently, the report is saying that he's planning to show up. And so you can see a video with Trump, about this whole racial summit thing. Okay, I'm going to say this. A lot of things have been about race. And so you know that this is not fake news. You see here where it's saying that he's going to hold this summit. And so a lot of people on social media talk a lot about, you know, um, the ills of race. I have myself. What is it? Daryl Scott. The President Trump is on board with two racial summits. So there's going to be two actually. I would say one of the summits would be for athletes. So that's probably why they have Colin Kaepernick. And then the other side is going to be the summit would take place during the summer between the NBA and the NFL. So it's unclear if Kaepernick has been invited or if he's just on Scott's wish list. So Scott says that the details of the summit will be finalized next week. So this is the guy right here, Scott. And so I'm like, oh my God, it could go really well or it could go really horrible. So I can't wait to see that. But this is a little ad or whatever. But wow, I can't wait to see, so they're talking about Trump and Kanye media madness. And so it goes into it, the five. But anyway, I'm not even going to go into the video, but I would think that everyone would want to see what the outcome of these two summits are going to be like because there's been so many issues surrounding race. And speaking of race, um, now I don't know if you remember some time ago that there was an incident at one of the Waffle Houses in the South. And so the actual guy that was proclaimed as the hero of the incident, there was an incident where there was a shooting and there was a guy who he's an African American fellow and he was looked at as being the hero. He says he has not heard from Donald Trump whatsoever. So maybe he's one of the ones that may show up to the summit. It's a possibility. Maybe they will acknowledge or honor him there. I would think. If they don't, you guys remember this because I was looking at it. He was saying that he hadn't heard anything from Donald Trump. And so I guess, usually when they have like a hero or somebody that everybody pretty much recognizes for good deeds done. They will have like some kind of recognition for that person being a hero. And what he did was really heroic because he put himself in a position where he could have gotten shot himself. And so I guess he stepped in. I'm just kind of saying verbatim because he stepped in a situation that was really dangerous. He didn't have any weapons on him, and he apprehended a suspect that had, I believe, he had one of those rifles, or one of those guns that is can do a lot of damage. So this is the guy right here, James Shaw Jr. And so it says in bold print, the Waffle House shooting hero hasn't heard from President Trump. And so if he's holding two racial summits, he might want to invite this guy because it doesn't look good. But anyway, it says President Trump has yet to contact or publicly praise the Waffle House hero, James Shaw Jr. So he, in his comment here on his quote, it says, I haven't heard anything from basically the commander in chief. So that's not to say that he didn't try to contact him or not. So maybe he's waiting for these two summits, Mr. James Shaw Jr. He might be waiting for those two summits to come. So maybe you're gonna be one of the main guests. That would kind of be, a good way to give him a platform to recognize him and give him like a trophy or some type of recognition for his civilian deed that is really good, a good deed done, and a life-saving attempt, which he could have very well lost his own life trying to help other people. It would be a good way to present to him recognition if they invited this guy to the racial summit. And so, there's been so many things that are surrounding racial issues or race. So I believe that someone is probably coaching Donald Trump. I would bet, because there's been so much firestorm on a lot of issues. Meanwhile, I don't know if people realize this. They have this thing called the caravan at the border where there were some people who are now being brought into the US. Well, I guess they're leveling and balancing things out, which is kind of sad. I'm not saying it to sound like this is funny or a joke because it really isn't, but they are ending protections for people who are Honduras. And so thousands and thousands of Honduras people are going to have to make a decision to do something about their visas, or they're going to have to, as decades that they've been here in the US, they're going to have to look in 18 months, look at going back to Honduras. And so all of the protections that they had, are pretty much coming to an end. And I'd say that it has to do with the whole craziness surrounding immigration and the fights that have been going on. And so here it's saying the last migrants from the caravan camp crossed US-Mexico border. And so a group of 228 Central American migrants who camped out at the US-Mexican border after crossing Mexico in the caravan have entered the US to request asylum. But I'm hearing there's been problems even with that some people have been waiting for a long time. There's some drama with all of that. And you see, it doesn't look like it's a very good situation to be in. It almost looks like the people are like so desperate. They're out there. They're, in a situation it's really terrible. And meanwhile, the Honduran people are losing their protections for thousands of Hondurans. They're going to have to make some hard pill decisions. So it says hundreds of thousands of immigrants And let me read the numbers to you. 57,000 Hondurans. That's a lot of people. And it's sad because something obviously really crazy is going on, and people are not really paying attention to this, or at least not enough. Maybe they think because it doesn't affect them, and that's the thinking of some people. So, from other countries battered by violence and natural disasters who are losing permissions to be in the US. So, these are, and I'll read it from the top. So, in New York, Associated Press has reported that Trump administration said that Friday, and let me pan up because they're actually showing, what I'm talking about, says that it's ending the special immigration protection for about 57,000 Hondurans, adding them to the hundreds of thousands of immigrants from other countries battered by violence and natural disasters who are losing their protections, losing permission to be in the US. So I don't know, but something doesn't feel right. And so shortly thereafter, reading all of this, he's planning these racial summits, two of them. One has this, the racial summits seem like the way he's planning it, these racial summits are going to address the Black community, is what it looks like. So all of this is going on. Immigration advocates decried the move and contend that ending this status will drive people underground who have been established or have established roots in the US for many years and decades, including having American born children. That's what I would think if they've been here for so long. And now you decide to just like let them, go, to a place that they have no knowledge, really, not very much, you know, knowledge of. So they do know that there could be natural disasters and violence. So the Hondurans, the program known as TPS, has been in place since 1999 after the Hurricane Mitch devastated the Central American nation that year before. And so I remember when they had the Hurricane Mitch, because it was really, really bad. So that's when a lot of people had to come for asylum to the US because the natural disaster was so bad. A lot of people were displaced. They were basically instantly homeless. It's like I said in another video, anything can happen, anywhere at any given moment. And so, you know, some woman, it's just crazy. She was like putting this thing together saying that there's plutonium and things in the air. I'm like, there's things in the air everywhere. If you look around you, everywhere there's potential for something, volatile or dangerous to happen. So goes on to read, the administration says conditions in Honduras have improved. So while advocates argue that it is still hasn't fully recovered from the hurricane, it is now plagued by rampant violence. So it's been replaced with the violence. So they're basically dumping people back into a volatile situation. So Trump's opponents argue that's effectively adding tens, if not hundreds and thousands of people to the ranks in those in the US without legal status. So it's really getting crazy. So Martha Connor, a 50-year-old union organizer in Southern California who has lived in the US for decades and has 3 American-born children, said before the announcement that she was leaving regardless of the administration policies. So some people are voluntarily leaving because they don't have any other alternative. So one thing I can tell you is that I'm not going to Honduras. So she's going somewhere else, she said, noting that many of the asylum seeker migrants in caravan are recently reached the US border are from Honduras, which so this all ties together. So the people in the caravan, a lot of those people too are from Honduras. Now you're getting rid of people that are here that have been here for decades that were originally born from Honduras, and now you got this migrant caravan of people who that's where they come from. That's why they're fleeing. That's why they're coming over here. It's because they're fleeing what these people, you're trying to dump them back over. It's almost like recycling, folks. You know, we've got this group of people, we got to get rid of them. Okay, we're bringing these people in. Your turn. And so if I were those people, I probably wouldn't want to come over here because they're going to turn around and send you back. So I'm just saying, it goes without saying. So one thing I can say, the lady said that she doesn't want to go back to Honduras. So she said, if they are coming, why am I going over there? Exactly. It doesn't make any sense, does it? So there is no way I'll go back, Connor said. So this is a woman, she's pretty smart. At least she knows, it doesn't make sense to go back where you came from. And now they're bringing other people from the place where she doesn't want to go. And a whole bunch of other people don't want to go. That's the reason why they're here. So around 437,000 immigrants hailing from 10 countries have had temporary, or TPS, which is temporary protection status. It's designated and created in 1990 to allow people from countries affected by natural disaster, earthquakes, man-made disasters like war, which that could happen here, to have a short-term safe haven. Only a few thousand still have the status. So those with it have generally been able to work with permissions, travel outside the U.S. and return. So countries are added to a list as circumstances warrant. So with renewals coming usually around about every 18 months, while some countries have been taken off the list, others have stayed on it for an extended period of time. So Honduras, I guess, was one. So which critics say turns the program into a default amnesty. And we know what that is going to result in. So under the Trump administration, the Department of Homeland Security has terminated the program for Sudan, Nicaragua, Nepal, Haiti, notably El Salvador, which accounted for more holders of the special status than any other nation. And so that explains why, because I noticed like over the years, there were a lot of different people that looked like they came from different places, and they just seemed like they popped up everywhere, especially in California. So they have been given deadlines to leave or gain legal status if possible, starting in November for Sudan and throughout to 2019 for the other countries. So several groups are suing to stay in the U.S. because they don't want to go back because the conditions may be better in terms of the natural disasters. Who's to say that won't happen again? Because they're in an area that's high prone to that. And then they have the violence that ensues after, because what do people do in a natural disaster? You got some people that they're fleeing because they want safety. They don't want to get killed. And then you have others take advantage of the moment, thinking, I'm going to break in criminals. Or they have that mentality. They decide to break into places, hurt people, do all kinds of melee and killing and things like that, because they figure that the police are swamped. They're not going to be able to get in, especially if there's some crazy disaster. They're so busy saving lives rather than trying to protect lives that might be, feeling like they're, having to hide from criminals and things like that. And, they're not trying to, jail people. They're trying to save people from getting whatever, drowned or pummeled with rocks, whatever the natural disaster is. So it's saying that they have been given deadlines to leave or gain legal status if possible, starting in November. So that's what's going on now. And the protections have been extended for 6,900 Syrians who already have them. But the administration has said it won't take on new applicants. So decisions are coming for South Sudan, Somalia, and Yemen, which cover fewer than 1,700 people. So Daniel Sharp, legal director of Central American Resource Center in Los Angeles, has said he doesn't believe most immigrants with the status will leave after settling down roots with U.S.-born children, jobs, and homes. I would think not. That would be kind of hard to say, okay, you've been here for decades, now you got to leave. So that's basically what's going on. So people don't want to go back to being undocumented, but I don't think that you are going to see a ton of people returning to their countries of origin. They're probably going to go to other places to flee because they don't want to go back to the country if there's lots of violence, and if they're not really used to being there and they've been here in the US, they've been Americanized. So that's the main thing. They've got jobs. So you're telling them to leave all of that behind. So El Salvador actually had the protections twice. So the first time in the early 1990s until December 1994, they've had it. So it's estimated that around 150,000 people were covered with this around then. This was El Salvador. So Cecilia Manhaver, a University of Kansas sociology professor, said that while exact numbers aren't unknown, it's clear that many have stayed in the U.S. and when the program had ended. Um, Even when the program has ended, they still stayed. So some got permanent residency through family sponsorships, but immigration law has changed since then, that there are fewer avenues for legalization. So some people that are here that originally came from other countries got what is a permanent residency through a family sponsorship. So not many people have had the luxury or had known people who could do that. And now they've ended a lot of all of that. So Ramba Rajni, 53, a native of Nepal, who's been in New York for close to 2 decades, doesn't know what she's going to do. So she spent many of those years without legal status after overstaying a visa, but got protection after April of 2015 during the earthquake in Nepal that killed about 8,000 people. So with the legal authorization the program provides, she is able to go to working in a nail salon and owning one, and she employs 3 other people. So she financially supports her husband and her children in Nepal, which she says that still hasn't recovered from the earthquake that they had. So back in 2015. So I never thought this was going to end. So what can I say? So Reggie said that after the government declined last week to renew the protections about 9,000 Nepalese people, this is very difficult. They're going to have to relocate as well. So Taxon reported that Santa Ana, California, Hahala, and Taxon cover immigration issues for the Associated Press. So it's the end of the article pretty much. So all of this is going on. And the reason why I mention this, because it all ties together. You got the immigration issue, the racial summits, the 2 racial summits coming. So I would like to see what those 2 racial summits are going to be about after all this firestorm with the slavery comments, because this is really something's going on. That's all I can say. Something's really going on, and now you got these migrants coming and they're at the US border, and here you got a whole bunch of people that they're going to let go. And meanwhile, I don't know if people are aware that California, they were trying to do a Calexit. And so Calexit, and I was looking at that as well because I heard that they were trying to separate California into 3 entities, sort of, and that might be similar to what is going on. So there's supposed to be a Calexit. And so what they're trying to do is put it on the ballot as a measure that could be coming very, very soon. So California might be changing altogether. They say that it might even split from the US. That's a big move. That's a big move. And so I'm wondering what happens with all of that. Meanwhile, once again, they said that California produces a lot of money. And I heard this as well. I don't know how all this, somehow I feel like it all ties together for some strange reason. You got all these people that they're recycling back and forth. They're moving people in and then, moving people out, and by the thousands. And so if anybody's reporting on anything, they would you would think they would report on something like that instead of like plutonium and radiation. These things actually are happening actually more frequent and more rapidly. you know so and they're happening right away. And so, on top of that, there's this big fight in California that asked judges to toss out Trump administrative suit over the sanctuary laws. So that fight is going on. So there's something obviously really going on. And I don't think people are really, they're not really looking at it as much. Now, the people who are impacted the most probably are paying close attention to it, but the people who feel like it doesn't include them, or they're not the ones that have to, worry as much about those issues, not saying they don't have other issues they got to worry about. They're probably not looking at it and paying attention, but something definitely is going on. And so I would want to see, resulting around these two racial summits, what that whole thing's going to be about. And I would bet that someone is coaching Trump and telling him, there's been a firestorm on social media with the comments with Kanye West. He needs to give a public apology, or he at least, if he doesn't apologize, he needs to explain himself. And so by you giving the racial summits, we've had stuff that happened in the NFL where people are kneeling down because they feel like that patriotism is not working for everybody. It's only for a select group, which I believe that is true. All this stuff, it's usually people who feel like they are not the ones that are being impacted by, all of the lies that are told in putting your hand on your heart and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. People who feel like it's true for them, but it's not true for others. They don't feel the need that they have to kneel down, that they have to, they obsess on patriotism, and then they talk about we have to be thankful for all the people that died in the war and all this kind of, but do you know there are people that also died in the war, and then there are people that came back from the war who happen to have served in the war, but they weren't treated like other war vets simply because of the color of their skin. And so people don't even really pay much attention to the words that is being said in the Pledge of Allegiance. Originally, the pledge was not for Black people. It was actually against, it had a lot of racial overtones. So if you see the original pledge, that's the reason why you see some Black people don't really want to obsess on patriotism, because they don't feel that it includes them. And so maybe that's another reason. Maybe he could address that during the racial summits that he has, because there's been a lot of shootings of African Americans that had no weapons. There's been a war on people of color. There's been a war on people who are from these other countries that are, which California is it's full of immigrants. Even people who are not foreign born, they're, originally somebody before them wasn't, from somewhere else. So it says Trump questions the need for immigration judges as he blasts total catastrophe of asylum seekers at the U.S. border. See, there we go again. So he's not really that enthused about these people coming over here when they're deporting so many. And I would wonder, why would they pick over here with all of this craziness going on? It's the wrong time to be trying to come from somewhere else, fleeing for asylum, and come in here when they're trying to, drop programs, TPSs. They're getting rid of that. They're ending all of the protections, and they're pretty much making people go back where they came from, if they originally weren't born here. So it says he's questioned this, why are they doing this? And the president blasted the existence of immigration judges while renewing the criticism of the caravan and some 160 Central American asylum seekers who arrived at the border near San Diego last week. So he called it a catastrophe. So while American law allows immigrants without visas to present themselves at the port of their entry and to claim asylum, Mr. Trump and his allies have blasted the caravan as an example of the poor system that encourages illegal immigration. So he's not for it, really. You know, he's probably just going along with the song and dance of all of it. And so you can read about it, but, you know, something definitely is going on. And so I was going to look up Calexit because obviously they've been talking about this for a while now. And so it's coined as Calexit 2018. And so California independence is what it is from the US. It's called a Calexit initiative. So California independence from the US initiative. So it's also known as Calexit. Initiative will not be on the ballot in California as combined initiated constitutional amendment and the state statute on November 6, 2018. So the initiative was informally referred to as Calexit. So the Calexit plan to divorce California from the US is getting a second chance. Now, this is what I saw. Now, see, at first they were saying they weren't going to do it. That was then. But this is now. They're considering it. So there's this campaign about this whole thing. And so it's a proposed California secession measure that has been cleared to begin gathering needed signatures to qualify for the ballot, so people can vote on it. A similar effort by the so-called Calexit organizers failed last year. So that was the one they were trying to do last year. So at the same time, there's an initiative backed by billionaire Tim Draper to split California into 3 states. This is what I was telling you about. There's supposed to be North California, South California, and then New California. So yet the proposal known as New California seeks to carve out rural countries into the 51st state, and it's critical of the state sanctuary policies, which this all ties together, y'all. So it all has to do with the immigration stuff. It really does. So there's this crazy war on California, and you know, you've heard it. You know, he's not in favor of the sanctuary judges. He's not in favor of sanctuary cities himself, I don't believe. He's not in favor of people coming here, and he's pretty much ending all of the protective programs for people that have been asylum seekers in the past. So they've been here for decades, and he's basically telling them to pack up and go. So on Monday, the California Secretary of State's office announced that a secession ballot proposed that has been cleared to begin gathering needed signatures. It comes amid the efforts that seek to split up California. So Calexit is left. We are progressive, and that's why we don't like Trump. Marcus Ruiz Evans, one of the leaders of the Yes California campaign seeking California independence. But there are some very hardcore Republican concepts to Calexit, including the group saying that they don't want to waste tax money. So Evans said that the group's members have risen about 4 times to roughly 44,000 members since the election of President Donald Trump. So that's what this whole effort has been about. So the similar effort by backers of Calexit failed last year after a negative fallout that emerged following a disclosure that its leader, Louis J. Marinelli, was living in Russia. So Marinelli, who is still listed as one of the backers of the measure, said that in the interview that he travels to Russia and he has worked from time to time, but is still a resident of California. So I believe you can't do that if you're trying to, you know, get involved with these type of issues. You know, so if the current Calexit measures gets enough signatures to qualify, it would result in a special election in 2021. So this is when people will start seeing more of the whole thing around surrounding Calexit. So to ask California voters whether the state should become an independent country, the backers have until about mid-October to get almost 366,000 signatures of registered voters to qualify for it for the ballot. And so a long shot effort. So however, some analysts suggest that the secession's efforts have a long shot passing. So Berkeley IGS poll released that March 2017 found California's opposed independence from the US by more than 2-1. So it could be because people are afraid that they won't have enough funding and money, and California could basically go to pot. So it could become a war-torn state. There'll be a lot of notoriety. There will be a lot of publicity, but I think in practical terms, it's going to fizzle out. And so Seth Kaplowitz, a finance lecturer in San Diego State University, is stated this. So it would be ridiculous to secede from the union. The only person who would probably be happy about it is probably Donald Trump. So there have been more than 200 attempts throughout California's history to split up the state. So the sixth largest economy, this is where I was telling you that California is a moneymaker. So some argue that California is the sixth largest economy in the world, already has essentially acted like a separate country by signing agreements, memorandums of understanding that the nations on issues as well as climate change. So, for example, Democratic Governor Jerry Brown signed an agreement last year to work with China to fight climate change. So that move came a week after Trump announced his intention for the U.S. to withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord. So California state leaders also have taken a different view from the Trump administration when it comes to the issues, including offshore oil drilling, undocumented immigration, healthcare issues, and federal lands. So war. With the Trump administration earlier this month, the Trump administration filed a lawsuit against California's so-called sanctuary state law. So there's a big fight going on, and people don't even realize it. So that's the biggest issue as well. You know, this big fight that's going on with sanctuary state laws aimed at protecting undocumented immigrants. And I don't know, all these people who are backing or who claim they like Trump so well, some of those people are in this situation right now. In response, Brown said that this is basically going to war against the state of California. So we're even, the state of California is going through a war battle. So the engine of the American economy is California. And so for those of you people talking about people are leaving, no, that's not true. What they're trying to do is they're trying to secede from the U.S. And become an independent state. So more than 30 lawsuits have been filed between California and the federal government since Trump was sworn into office January 2017. So Trump, who has called California out of control, sought to cut the law enforcement funds over the sanctuary policies in the state last year, but the court ruled against that administration getting shortchanged. So regardless, Evans contends that Californians don't get their fair share of federal spending for the money paid by taxpayers in the Golden State. So figures from the Conservative Tax Foundation show that California got back estimated around 78 cents on each dollar paid in 2005 to the federal government, while Alabama received 1.66, $1.66. So, and Kentucky got $1.51. So in terms of, you know, on the dollar. So they're saying that California is being shortchanged. Other places are being looked at, and notice those places are in the South, Kentucky, Alabama, where they have the most racial tension. Well, not the most, some of the most racial tension in terms of, you know, people getting hurt in the Waffle House, getting arrested, stuff like that. You know, they have there's Southern ways to where some people believe in certain things, you know, and Trump, he probably likes those places, but Evans maintains that California if it were an independent nation, it could eliminate bureaucracy and by half and cut out overall taxes for businesses and individuals. So Kaplowitz doesn't buy that argument that independent California would necessarily help businesses. So everybody is leaving California because they're overtaxed. So that's the reason. So somebody was saying it was because of plutonium and the radiation. I said it was because of how expensive it is here. So I was right. So it says most people who do leave, they're leaving because they've been overtaxed by the state. He said, so businesses are leaving. People are moving to Washington State, Texas, and other states that don't have high income tax. So splitting California in three. Now, this is what I was telling people about, and some people didn't believe me, but this is what they were considering doing. Meantime, there is a measure that backs Silicon Valley billionaire Tim Draper to split California in three separate states. So there's a North California, there's a South California, and then there's a California. So Draper's plan would create Northern California state, includes San Francisco, Silicon Valley, Sacramento, Southern California state with San Diego and the Inland Empire countries and portions of the state's southern Central Valley. And a third would retain the name California, including Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and several other counties along the coast. So, Inland Empire counties and portions of the state is southern Central Valley. So all of this basically is saying that they were not really one state, that we're so large that we really have to be three different personalities, said Kaplowitz. So therefore, each personality should be its own state. So it's like many states within one big state. So the reality is that you can say that about virtually any state. So November ballot. So Draper, chairman of the so-called Cal 3 is what they call it, campaign announced earlier that this month his group planned to submit more than 600,000 signatures, or nearly twice the amount required by law to qualify in November's 6th ballot. So Cal 3 is committed to solving California's most pressuring issues, on pressing issues, including the state's failing school system, impacts more than 6 million kids, highest in the nation taxes, deteriorating infrastructure and strained government. And the group said this recently. So partitioning California into three states would empower regional communities to make better, fairer, and more sensible decisions for their citizens. So this isn't the first time that Draper has sought to split up California. He backed it in 2014, efforts to break up California into 6 states. But despite the spending more than $5 million on the measure, it failed to qualify for that ballot. So even if Draper's group gets enough signatures that this time, though, it still won't be easy to split up the state which joined the Union in 1850. So the legislator would need to give its consent along with Congress, creating a new California. At the same time, there's a new California conservative movement that seeks to carve out the rural countries into the 51st state. But it isn't a ballot initiative. The group is lining up support in countries, or in not countries, but counties, rather than it hopes to take it to the legislature and the Congress soon. So far, the group claims that they have at least 38 of the state's 58 counties. So people are really disenchanted with what they're seeing in the Sacramento area. Paul Preston has said that vice chair of New California Movement, he complained that there's controversial sanctuary state laws along with state overregulation that are just some of the concerns fueling the interest in the split. So we'll have 49 counties at the end of this, said Preston. We want this to be a win-win for California and New California. But Kaplowitz said that having California split in 3 separate states over, or even a 51st state, would be an unruly, and chances of it happening anytime soon are very slim to none. So this is what I've been hearing that they're trying to do, all of this. And a lot of this is coming under fire because people don't want to have sanctuary cities. They don't want to have the sanctuary judges. There's a lot of fight, and especially Orange County. There's places where they've protested about this. And so already they're saying, getting shortchanged here, they're saying that Californians don't get their fair share of federal spending for the money paid by taxpayers. So we're taxpayers here. We're not getting our fair shares. So they pretty much gave you the numbers here, cents on the dollar since 2005 to the federal government, while Alabama receives $1.66 and Kentucky receives $1.51. So there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a big fight going on, and California is right knee deep in the middle of all of it. And so while everybody's complaining about some of the other, meager issues surrounding just race alone, there are even bigger issues going on that can impact everybody. Poverty has no color. I believe that. Poverty has no color. And when it comes down to issues surrounding money, anybody can be impacted by that. And so, I'm just wondering what's going to happen with these two racial summits that they claim that he's putting on, one for the NFL, one for the NBA. I believe that's what he said, one for the NBA or whatever. But anyway, we shall see. With that being said, I will let go of this topic for now. And here we go. Waffle House Massacre and 7 things we need to know about Travis Green, Green King. So I'm not going over that, but there's obviously something going on. California is on the map now. If it hasn't been, it is now. And it is big. Thanks for listening.